I remember, it's so funny you said it. I remember when I first started in ministry, it actually was in my undergrad, and I was in college, and I joined this group called Collegiate Masters Corps. And so it was like this
Great name.
I know. They made it sound so fancy. And I remember going there and they're like, you're going to gain all these practicums. You're going to learn all this stuff about ministry. So I'm like ready, pen in hand, ready to go. And they're like, all right, so here's how day one looks like. We're going to teach you how to rap chords.
Yep.
And I remember being like, rap chords?
Yep.
There's a way to rap chords? And they're like, absolutely. There's a wrong way. There's an over and under. And I remember just learning all these things in my first week there that I did not think at all applied to ministry, but they're 100% all about ministry.
Yeah. That's so good.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's part of even what we're doing here. We're trying to like say, man, we have so many ways as a church that we preach God's word every week and preach First Wednesday and develop worship and ministry. And yet, like, so many of the things that I think makes the chapel special isn't. I love all those things, but is like a lot of other things like that aren't that. They're like the Monday to Friday culture of the church, discipleship of people, handling life and ministry. And so we thought about putting these like kind of podcasts together just to have a little bit more of an unscripted like view of like what is life really behind the scenes?
Yep.
How do you really
What happens
live
behind
out
the curtain?
Yeah,
I love it.
with your family, and how do you what does church look like, and how do we and to me that I think we still love that. We still find the joy in that, you know. Even in the messiness, I think I like Proverbs, like when there is no ox, the stable is clean, you know. But when there is an ox, there's some, and that's part of life, you know. Ministry, a moving church and moving families have some stuff that they deal with. And so we just wanted a chance to communicate with our church family and friends, like in a way that's like, how do we grow in our faith? And so we're taking questions, totally unscripted.
Love it.
We haven't planned any of this, so we're gonna like roll and get started.
Great.
Here. Yeah.
I love that.
I don't know if you want to ask a question or you want me to start or how you want to go.
Questions. So, yeah, I can ask questions.
Yeah, do it.
Awesome, fun ones, too.
Great.
So, you always talk about Alabama.
Yeah.
You always do.
Yeah.
So, that's your favorite college. That's your favorite, football team, right?
Yeah.
So, why is that? Well, how did they become your favorite football team?
So I went to seminary in Alabama. And I did not, unless you live in a football town, you can't feel the craziness of the culture of Alabama. And honestly, I don't even know if I care as much about the football as I fell in love with the culture of like all-in community rallies around something. In fact, we lived in these little apartments in Birmingham, Alabama, called Breckenridge, and there was a stone duck in front of our apartment. Of course, the debate in Alabama is Alabama or Auburn, and this lady would dress her duck up in a different Auburn outfit every week, and people would literally drive to see what the duck was.
Wow.
It's like a different, it's like,
Wow.
you know, it's like your grandma will curse at you over Alabama football. It's like a different thing, but it's really the culture of Alabama football that I fell in love with, like the all-in community, camaraderie, connection. And I remember I went to a spring training game where the offense was scrimmaging the defense, and there were 100,000 people there. And I was like, this is just, I just never seen
just for scrimmage.
such love for this. And so that's where I started following Alabama football.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yep. I even know that when we were in, people in the church all know that you love Alabama football. And so I know when we were even in Israel, I think somebody took a picture.
Yeah.
Of like
I know, in like some holy place, and they're still in Alabama.
Yes, it was great.
Yeah, no,
people like stopped, like, we have to take a
totally,
picture for Pastor Brandon.
And for Alabama people, that is still sacred. Like, you could put that in a holy place, and it goes together for some weird reason. Yeah, that's how I got into Alabama football. Yeah.
I know, I probably know the answer for this one, but I'm just curious too to hear your explanation of it. Whenever you're going away, if it's on vacation or if you're doing things that are like not in the office, are you a mountains guy or are you a beach guy?
You know, I started becoming a beach guy, and I don't know why. I think the noise of the water, you know, but I can also really go anywhere that's away. The older I get, the less I just want a lot of activity and vacation. So it's like the least I can do, the least plan, the least rehearse, like going to, like, we used to do Disney when our kids were little. I'm like, that feels like a punishment to me. I just want to sit, drink coffee, relax, spend time with my family. So like as little activity, as much retreat, as much quiet. So we'll do a couple different things. Either we do the beach, but we also have close lifelong friends in upstate New York. We They have a furnished basement, so I sit on their deck. They have 2 horses. I drink coffee. I do nothing, but just study, pray, get alone. There is something about nature.
Yeah.
There's something about being outdoors
Yeah.
that I think just heavens declare the glory of God. The skies proclaim his handiwork. Even Jesus went to a mountainside to pray. Moses met face to face with God on a mountain. There's something about outdoors that I think being near the creation at least starts to open you to the Creator in a
That's
way
right.
that's just like busy indoors doesn't.
Yeah.
Yeah. What
That's
about you?
true. So I feel like I flip-flopped. I think when I was living in New York, I loved the mountains. I
Yeah.
always did. And I have family that live in Colorado, so I got a chance to always see that, even as a kid too. But I also think I didn't really know much about beaches till I moved down to Virginia. And for me, like beaches were like Coney Island,
Yeah.
or some places off in New England.
Yeah. No,
It's
that's
cold.
not a beach. Yeah.
We thought it was,
Uh-huh.
But then I came down and I was like, love Virginia Beach.
Yeah.
Able to go to the Outer Banks for the first time, which
Yeah.
was really exciting, and get to hang there. And so I don't know. I feel like I'm like in between now.
The beach is winning you over.
It is winning me
It's
over.
evangelizing you.
It is. I still can't do as many hours as some other people do, like stay out there for like half a day or a full day. But I
Yeah.
can get in a few hours and it's
Yeah.
like enjoy it.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. There is something, change of pace, change of place, change of location. I think Mark Patterson says that refuels the soul.
Yeah.
And so to me, I feel like about every 3 months, I need like a 2-day little, it can literally be just tucked away
Yep.
anywhere. But there's something about the change of that rhythm that changes the way I see, hear, sense the Lord. And so, and I think Jesus regularly did that. It's interesting, he didn't just go to his closet to pray. He often withdrew to lonely places
know.
to pray.
Yeah.
He went to a mountainside to pray. There's something, I don't know if it's the intentionality or whatever, but there's something to that rhythm about withdrawing that you kind of fill up the cup before you come and
Yeah.
pour it out again.
I think one of my favorite stories actually in the Bible about that I've often thought about with Jesus retreating or getting away is when he found out that John the Baptist was beheaded.
Yeah.
And here he finds this news, but the next thing that happens is the feeding of the 5,000.
Yeah.
And so it's like he has this moment where he experiences loss, he experiences grief, but now he is sitting in front of these people. So he could have escaped that and not done that, or he could have just stayed there and did ministry. And that's what he did. And he did this miraculous thing where he just multiplied food and all these things took place. And it's such a huge miracle in the Bible. But then immediately after that ministry time, what does he do?
Yeah.
He goes away to a lonely place. This is where you get the whole account of him walking on water, getting back to Peter and all that. But the in-between was him,
Resting.
okay, I did ministry and then I rested and I found that time to just
Don't you
catch my
think we
breath.
undervalue rest in our culture in the sense that overwork is like a badge? And man, we know how to hustle around here.
Yeah.
Like our church does a lot.
There's no doubt.
But like I'm like thinking of so many principles in Scripture of the principle of Sabbath, like God rests, like the principle of the year of Jubilee. They don't even plant crops. The land rests. Old Testament Deuteronomy, you get married your first year, you can't go away to war. You have to be alone with your wife. There are so many rhythms, and I wonder if in the technology of life and the TV and the text and the interconnectedness, it is like our soul is moving so fast that I just don't think God works fast. He only works slow. And so I'm like, man, am I just moving at a speed that I can't be still and know that he's God? And what does it look like? I think that's why I value the morning so much. Because if I get up at 5:30, rarely, although we're in one text thread that does hit us early in the morning.
real early in the morning, and you know who you are.
Stop it. But there is something like no one's going to bother me because there's just this space that I'm alone in. But I just wonder if in our culture there's something about rest pulling aside. It acknowledges our humanity and our need for God.
Yeah, I think that's so true. Especially being in ministry, and a church that's growing, and we're planning a campus, and we're building on this location, and we're always dreaming about the future too. In all honesty, I've had to really think through in my own life too, like what does it look like for me to catch my breath. So that's something that I've
Tell
always been
everybody you
thinking
do
about.
something weird. I don't know why this is refueling to me. Like yard work is refueling to you.
I know, and every time I bring it up, I feel like
I
it's
don't
it's
get
a
it.
thing. It is so, you know what? It is so refueling. That's such a good word for it. I once heard someone say, and I don't know who it is, but I once heard somebody say, if you work with your hands, you rest with your mind.
Yeah.
And if you work with your mind, you rest with your
Yeah.
hands. And I don't know what it was about that statement, but it just totally like affirmed the
Yeah.
fact that on my day off, I love sweating and working outside and doing lawn work or doing tree work or helping people. I don't know what it is, but I love that, and it is very refreshing. And I think what it does is it does help me take my mind off of certain things that I'm thinking about all week long, and it puts it onto something. And I think also too, I don't know if you can attest to this. Sometimes in ministry, when you're pastoring, you're doing a lot of work that's adding a lot of value, and you're helping to work through confrontation or conflict. You're dreaming, you're thinking about how do I build things,
Yeah.
but a lot of times you don't really know in those moments. Okay, did that all amount to something?
Yeah.
But when you're working with your hands, you can
Yeah.
say, hey,
Yeah.
this I did, and here's the accomplishment
There are
in the moment.
lines in that lawn right now.
Right
You know?
now, totally. You can see them today. That's what I can
Yeah.
see, the accomplishment of that.
No,
so.
my boys are old enough. I make them mow now, so I did that.
Switching gears.
Yeah.
Question for you. You're somebody who I think every time you're communicating, you're talking, you're sharing with the team, if it's in a staff meeting or if it's in a moment, or of course on Sunday mornings too as well. You're always dropping some great knowledge and information. I would say a lot of people go to you to learn and grow. So who are the people that you go to in learning and growing? Who are the podcasts? Who are the leaders? I know that you're a reader. I know that you're a learner. And so I'm just curious, like, who are some of those go-to people for you?
Man, it depends on what like area. You know what I mean? So if it's like leadership, I love Jensen Franklin's done new mentoring moments. Chad Veach does leadership lean-ins. Grow Leader with Pastor Chris Hodges does this. So you got like some of those church guys that do like church and ministry leadership stuff. But then there are I almost call them like church guys and Bible guys. I know that's weird. But like then I have other certain Bible guys. Like I read anything by John Stott in the Daily Knowledge Bible series. D.A. Carson has a guide to the exposition of. So I have like certain people I know, and I go to them. It's almost like a growth team. You would go to your doctor for this, but then you would go to your mechanic for this. And so I tend to not, like my mind is thinking like who that's their thing.
Yeah.
And what once that's their thing, I want to hear them in that area.
Yep.
And so I try to read broadly. I think for me though, people always ask like how long does it take to prepare a sermon to me? And I'm also like it's your whole life. You're just thinking, reading, consuming.
Yep.
You're like so it's almost like you've come back from the grocery store. You spent $300. You jammed everything in the pantry. I may not know what's for dinner tomorrow night, but I have all the ingredients there to get it. And so I've often thought so many people want a microphone but don't have anything to say. So just spend your life filling the pantry, and then you'll have something to say sometime. This is funny too, Joel. In the church, Pastor Loper, I love him. The pastor we pastored under in Birmingham, Alabama, he would preach, and he would ask me to preach some of the Sunday night sermons. But he would never ask me to preach Sunday night at church. This is a pretty good sized church until Sunday afternoon.
Right there.
Yeah, so like he'd call if he'd feel tired, and I think it was like, man, I'm tired, let him run. Or sometimes if he'd preach really good in the morning, I'd be like, he's going to let me preach at night. And so I literally just started this practice that I always had a sermon ready. And he never even asked, like, are you ready? Can you go tonight? It was like...
in and out of season, ready to go.
It's just like preachers are ready to preach.
Yeah.
If this is what you're called to do, you have something to say.
Yeah.
And so I think there's something to that. There's always something fresh in your heart when you're reading and studying and growing. There's always something new and, something you're excited about.
Yeah.
And so it's just always being a reader, a learner, a thinker, so that as time comes, you have ready. I also heard one more thing that John Maxwell said, you're always working on the big sermon and the bigger sermon.
That's good.
So the big sermon is the one that's coming this week, but the bigger sermon is your life, So you're just, I don't know when I'm going to use it, but I'm reading and praying and thinking about it and growing my soul So like, I have the sermon I'm preaching this week. That's big. But like, I also have the things the Lord's teaching me and doing in my
That's
heart
good.
that I don't know when I'm going to share them, but like I'm living in them enough that they're becoming part of me, you know.
Yeah. I know on our staff, I've experienced that from you on the receiving end. And I've heard it personally. I've also heard you say it to people on the team as well, where you really champion us and you encourage us just to go for it.
Yeah.
You've even said things like, "Don't be so obsessed with your content."
Yeah.
You know, it's something that has
Yeah.
been helpful as somebody who communicates as well, and
Yeah.
somebody who has opportunities to teach.
Yeah.
And it's like, man, He's been every day. He's in the details of your life. There's
Yeah.
stories to grab. There's
Totally.
different circumstances that have taken place. Like,
Yeah.
use those, apply those. And I think for young communicators, especially. And those who are communicating, I think that's so freeing, because a lot of times we can be so bound
Yeah.
to the content, to the outline, to the structure,
Yeah.
and we miss some of the things that I think people remember the most
Yeah.
in communicating.
Yeah, like where you're at, where they're at, looking at people's faces, connecting with their story. You know, those are like the differences in communication.
That's really good.
I think, you know.
That's good. Do I got time for a couple more questions?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's great.
One of the questions I had for you, that's probably a little bit more. I'm just curious. Every leader deals with this, I believe, and I think parents deal with it. I think everybody deals with it, and that is confrontation and conflict. And how we deal with that. And so I'm curious about, from a leader like you, who obviously has a lot of people that you work with, and multi-campus church, so many things that have taken place over the years.
Yeah.
How do you deal with some of the confrontation, some of the conflict? What are some of the ways that you would suggest leaders hit it on? Like, what's your first instinct when you confront something that has opposition attached to it?
Church or home?
Man, that's a great. I'll let you choose.
Church is easier. Church is easier.
Yes, it is.
Oh, I think you want to not be threatened by the conflict. And so I know it's crazy. I always just think, I wonder if there's something to what they're saying.
Wow.
That's true. So I always am curious, do you see something that I don't see that is broken around here?
Yeah.
And can I have somehow to have the security in my own soul to not be offended by it? And even if your delivery's wrong, to diffuse it. And I think if you ask me where I learned to resolve conflict, I think it was from my dad. I grew up, my dad had a construction company, and he just worked with customers. And he worked with the guys he managed. And so I watched my dad every day make customers happy. And he just was convinced, no matter what the problem was with the customer, that if he could sit down with them, he could figure out how to resolve it. And I think Romans 12 says, as far as it depends on you, make peace with every person. Once in a while, there'll be like some people you can't make peace with that are unreasonable.
Yeah.
So I get that. But I'm saying, like, that should be a small portion of it. Most people, if you love them and you care for them and you let them share I also like to just let people get it all out. Like, go ahead, get it all out, And so conflict has never been a problem for me. Katie would say I'm too good with it, but I don't know. I think there's something about not being afraid of it. And if you look at the New Testament, every letter Paul wrote was to a church that had some issues.
Yeah, that's
right.
right.
So why would we think we'd have families full of people,
From day one.
teenagers, life, people, and there's going to be no conflict? Like, are you crazy? What are you thinking? So like, I just assume the reality that we're all broken people, and I assume that I brought some of it on myself.
Sure.
So like, I think just as soon as you have a disposition that's not afraid of it and you're willing to embrace it, then you're halfway there. I think.
That's good.
So I don't know.
No, that's good.
What do you what do you think? Like, how do you handle conflict with people?
I think, like you said, listening before speaking is huge. Like, to make it simplistic, because I think there's so many layers of this conversation. I think it's helpful too in everyday life. I think the world is becoming less confrontational, one-to-one, person-to-person, and way more confrontational in written form, or way more confrontational online. Yeah. Like,
they send a mean email, right?
Oh yeah, no, totally. Yeah. And I think that what we've lost in that is the art of listening. Yeah. And not even just the art of listening to words, but like body movement, reactions. So I think, just like for a simple, quick answer, I would say listening and not thinking about what I'm gonna say. So this is hard, even in like a marriage standpoint with my wife, right? I'm thinking about what I want to say and how I want to respond, and I've had to teach myself not to do that. It's just really actively listen. So that's one of the ways that I think that I've tried to approach confrontation too. And I think also too, like the nature of who I am. I think I'm the third out of three brothers. I am like the youngest. I am raised in an Italian household.
Yeah.
I mean, like confrontation. It's not like
Part
we
of
look
it.
for it, but it's just part of life.
Yeah.
And I think I've had to learn to how to like
Yeah.
not lock into that as much and really listen and be slow to speak.
Katie and I get counseling twice a month as part of like our commitment to the church and to one of our mentors. And so our counselor just recommended this new book to us. I would just give it to anyone. Talk to Me Like I'm Someone You Love. And it was written by a counselor who was sitting in the book's Genesis comes from, he's sitting counseling this couple, and this lady's really coming at her husband. And finally, he just takes a piece of paper and he writes down these words, talk to me like I'm someone you love. And he holds up this phrase. And like everything in her demeanor changes.
Wow.
She gets soft and tender. And so this whole book, I actually would recommend it to couples. It's got like 168 just like on one page, just phrases. And so it's just like little, I think we get in ruts in conflict where we're saying the same thing. And so this book is just reminding ourselves, like, I'm somehow now talking to my spouse to defeat them, to win the argument, because I'm right, and I'm not actually in my tone and demeanor talking to them like they're someone I love. So even when I just use that phrase like that, it reminds me, man, this is someone I love. And so it's a really helpful little book. It just has a bunch of phrases like that just help you learn to say things in a different way, and you're making progress. And so I do think so much of conflict is like tone, demeanor, body language, pride, arrogance. I have to be right here. I'm winning. And somehow I won, especially in marriage. When I win, I don't win, And I'm like, I think I backed you into a corner. And I won the argument, and somehow I didn't win peace in this moment, you know. And so, like, man, there's something about being a peacemaker.
That's good.
That works through conflict and can handle that. Yeah.
I love that. So you guys are reading statements. You're texting statements to each other from the book.
I took like
That's
30
amazing.
pictures of the statements in my phone, and if we're having like a friendly disagreement, I'll just text her that. Like
in
that
the middle
word.
of it.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Or we'll go in different rooms and actually communicate via text. Because it's like somehow like we spend 15 minutes going back and forth and then we're not going anywhere. And so we're just trying this new thing.
Wow.
It usually has to do with parenting styles. And so we go in the opposite rooms and we just start, you know what it does? It slows down communication and it just takes the like juice out of it in a good way. And
Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah,
That's huge.
That book's interesting because it's just different. It's not a teaching book. It's just a way to try to give you a tool to find different words to talk to somebody.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah. You want to do one last question?
I have one if you
Let's
want.
do it.
Okay.
Let's do one last.
What would be one of your most favorite things or most fun things that you've done in ministry, like or had to have done, or all through the years you've been pastoring? And what is one of the toughest things you've had to do? I know it's a big one to end on.
Most fun things. Man, we've done so many fun things in the last 3 years, 4 years. God's opened up a door to be in a jail.
Oh, man.
There's nothing like going into jail and baptizing people.
Yeah.
There's nothing like I got to meet Dave's daughter, Tori. So Dave's been out of jail in our church community. His daughter's now out. I'll never get over the mystery of some of the ministry that partnering with Try Hope and just the mystery of God reaching people in jail and the community. Like, I don't know. I'm always amazed by those stories. And we see like probably one or two of those a month of those stories. In fact, it's just fresh on my mind because he's like, you're going to meet my daughter, Tori, and then I meet her. And we're just like, man, this is crazy.
That's
Amazing. In fact, I got to be with a girl who in our own church was in a women's prison for 2 years back in 2015 to 2017. Now she's out and she's connecting as a leader in the group today, like married, flourishing in life. So I'll never get over the like mystery of God working in one person's life. To me, the like is amazing, and
Wow.
it's so fun to be a part of something that we never dreamed of. We just have this process called Growth Track where we help people find their purpose, and then God brings gifted people who have these kind of gifts and builds those kind of ministries.
Yeah.
I'm always amazed that we have a Spanish-speaking
That's
church
right.
that's growing, and like one of the most amazing parts of our community that so the Lord has surprised us
Yeah.
every day with like
It's so
beyond
true.
our own ability through his own kindness, goodness, grace, built his church in ways that surprise us.
Yeah.
The hard things of life, man, I don't think there's anything harder than watching good people from a human perspective suffer for no fault of their own, you know.
Hmm.
So when you have one family lose two sons
Yeah.
to the same disease, sometimes you're driving home at night and you're trying to get it off of you. You know, like I don't understand this. I don't comprehend this. You'll hear horrible breakdowns and abuse that you didn't know could happen, and so I think the pain of watching people. I mean, that's the joy of ministry, that you get to be involved
Yeah, you
in
get to walk with it.
some of the deepest parts of life. But the wounds are when you wish it would have turned out different,
Yeah.
or you wish, like, could I have helped different, or how or why didn't we prayed and we planned, but how,
Yeah.
and those things I think you just have to leave with the Lord. Deuteronomy says the secret things belong to the Lord, and so you just try not to let it wound your spirit or like bitter your spirit. But those are the hardest things, when you're like, God, they didn't deserve that. They didn't. I don't. Just seeing the humanity of people. It's hard to, and you want to say something, you know.
Yeah.
And for me, at least, it's like I have nothing to say, and I guess that's part of it. You just sit there, you know, and you love people through it. But that's the hardest thing in ministry. And every year, or every 6 months in our church, somebody just has the bottom fall out of their life, and so you try to love them, care for them. But you do still have that thing in the back of your mind that is like, why, oh Lord, John 9, who sinned this man or his parents that he was born blind? Like, you try to figure out, and sometimes there's not just human explanations for the things of this life that are broken, and we can only have a hope of eternity in heaven and leave it with the Lord. And so I think when you try to explain it all, you get in dangerous territory. God is God. I don't understand it all, but I know in one day he makes all the sad things come untrue in heaven, and that's our hope of eternity. And in Jesus, he entered into our human suffering to show that he wasn't distant from it. I get all, but I think just at the end of the day, it's like the hardest part is human suicide, death, pain, loss. That's the worst part of ministry.
Yeah. That's great.
And it's been fun.
It's been awesome.
It's
Thanks
been
a lot.
fun to be able to talk together. Thank you guys for hanging out with us, letting us share some stuff about life and ministry and God. We're going to push these out every several weeks and just share from our heart God's word. So thanks for taking time.